Hey, I'm Tyler. I'm 25, born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona, and I've been living in Tempe for the past couple of years. Nothing fancy. I've got a small one-bedroom apartment, a reliable old Nissan, and a couple of dumbbells I never use. I'm not some influencer or genius or anything like that, just a regular guy trying to figure life out. A few weeks ago, I landed a new job at a tech distribution company. Office job, standard hours, decent pay. I work in logistics, nothing glamorous, but it keeps the lights on and gives me enough room to breathe. New job meant new people, new routines, and hopefully a chance to reset a bit. I just gotten out of a weird situationship that never really went anywhere. And honestly, I was ready for something new. That's when I met Jake. Jake was one of the first people to talk to me when I started. He's 26, outgoing, the kind of guy who cracks a joke during meetings and somehow gets away with it. We hit it off pretty quick, grabbed lunch together a few times, talked about sports, shared playlists. You know how some friendships just click without trying too hard? That was us. After a couple of weeks of working side by side, Jake says to me, "Bro, you should come by the house sometime. My mom always nags me about not bringing friends over. She'll finally shut up if I bring someone decent." I laughed. "Decent? That's a stretch." "Nah," he grinned. "You're good people. Seriously, swing by. She cooks like crazy on weekends." So I did. It was a Friday night when I pulled up to Jake's place, a quiet neighborhood, a little older, with trees that actually gave off some shade and front lawns that didn't look like Arizona had been on fire for 5 years straight. His house was clean, modest but cozy. He met me at the door wearing a backwards cap and socks with slides. "You come in," he said, stepping aside. "I think she's in the kitchen." As I walked in, the smell hit me first, something garlicky, something baked. And then I saw her, his mom, Amanda. She turned around from the kitchen counter holding a mixing bowl and smiled like she'd known me for years. And man, she didn't look like any mom I expected. She was tall, athletic, with this casual elegance that made her stand out without trying. Blonde hair tied back, a fitted workout top, yoga pants that told me she took care of herself, like really took care. And that posture, confident but relaxed. "You must be Tyler," she said warmly, walking toward me with that kind of grace you don't often see. "I've heard a lot about you." "All good things, I hope." I smiled, shaking her hand. "Mostly," she said with a wink. I was impressed. She had that natural charm, but also this look in her eyes, sharp, curious, the kind that sees through people quickly. She asked if I wanted a drink. I said water. She gave me lemon water in a tall glass, and we all sat around the island counter chatting while she prepped dinner. Jake disappeared upstairs for a while to change, I think. He yelled something about grabbing his charger or maybe calling his girlfriend. I wasn't really listening. My focus was already elsewhere. Amanda leaned on the counter across from me. We talked about random stuff, what I did before the job, where I was from, if I had family around. I threw in a few light jokes. I wasn't trying too hard, just being me. I complimented the house, then complimented her cooking, even though I hadn't tasted it yet. She laughed, and then I said, "You don't look old enough to be Jake's mom." She tilted her head, smirking just slightly. And then it happened. She looked me straight in the eye, no filter, no hesitation, and said, "You're not like his other friends." There was something in her tone, soft, a little playful, but it wasn't the words. It was her eyes that locked me in place, like they were saying something louder than the sentence, like they wanted to say more. And right then I knew this wasn't going to be just dinner. The weekend passed, but the moment Amanda looked me in the eyes and said, "You're not like his other friends," stuck in my head like a song I couldn't get rid of. I'd heard compliments before, sure, but not like that, not with that much weight behind it. It wasn't just the words, it was her expression, her body language, the way she said it, like she knew it would stay with me. Jake and I kept texting that weekend about work stuff, memes, dumb group chat updates, but I couldn't stop thinking about Amanda. I didn't have any plan, and I wasn't trying to be that guy, but I also wasn't the type to ignore something real. There was a tension between us, unspoken but obvious, and I wasn't about to pretend I hadn't felt it. On Monday morning, I woke up earlier than usual. My mind kept going back to that moment in the kitchen. Her eyes, the way she leaned on the counter, the way she didn't look away. So I did something maybe I shouldn't have done. I texted her. I still had her number. She gave it to me casually that night when I joked about wanting her famous lasagna recipe. It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't exactly innocent either. I stared at the screen for a few minutes, trying to decide what to say. I didn't want to come off creepy, but I also didn't want to act like that night hadn't meant something. Finally, I typed, "Hey, Amanda, hope your weekend went well. Just wanted to say thanks again for the dinner and the lemon water. Still thinking about that." Short, harmless, friendly, but with just enough to let her know I was testing the water. She responded 5 minutes later. "You're welcome, Tyler. You made a good impression." I smiled, and then my stomach flipped a little. There it was again, subtle, confident, like she knew what she was doing. So I pushed it just a bit further. Not like the others, right? This time she took longer to reply, maybe 3 minutes, but it felt like 10. Then exactly. No emoji, no exclamation point, just that one word. And that was enough. Over the next few days, we texted more. It wasn't constant or intense, but it was there always under the surface. Sometimes casual, "How's work? Did Jake tell you about the time he crashed his bike into a bush? What are you cooking tonight?" Sometimes less casual. "You seem older than 25 in a good way. You ask real questions. Most people don't." And I'd reply in kind, "You're easier to talk to than most people I've dated." "I still can't believe you're Jake's mom." By Thursday, we'd built a kind of rhythm. Every conversation had this hidden current running underneath it. There was no flirting technically, but it was all in the tone. You could feel it. Friday afternoon at work, Jake mentioned he was heading out of town for the weekend to visit his dad in Flagstaff. He invited me along, but I played it cool. "Nah, I've got some stuff I gotta take care of," I said, acting like I had plans. In reality, I didn't have any plans until 10 minutes after he left the office. I texted Amanda. "So just you this weekend?" She didn't take long to answer. "Looks that way." I paused, thought about it, and then sent coffee. This time she didn't answer right away. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then finally, "Tomorrow 10:30, I know a spot where no one will know either of us." I stared at that message longer than I needed to. My heart was beating harder than it should have been for something as small as a coffee date. But it wasn't just coffee. We both knew it. That night, I couldn't sleep. The next morning, I took longer than usual getting dressed, not too formal, not too lazy, something in between. I sprayed cologne I usually save for parties. I looked in the mirror 3 different times, and for the first time in a while, I felt excited about something. I pulled into the little coffee shop she sent me, this tucked-away place near a yoga studio with outdoor seating and zero chance of running into Jake or anyone from work. Amanda was already there. She stood as I walked up, black tank top, light jeans, hair down, this time sunglasses pushed up on her head. She looked incredible, like someone you notice even if you're not trying to. "Hey, stranger," she said with a smirk. "You're early," I replied. "I was curious if you'd show up." "I had to. You made it sound like secret agent stuff." We laughed, sat down, talked. At first, it was surface-level coffee, her yoga classes, her job as a freelance interior designer. I asked questions. She gave thoughtful answers. Then she asked me about my family, my dating history, my goals. At some point, the air changed. There was a pause between us, one of those moments where no one speaks, but everything is said anyway. She looked at me, I looked at her, and then she said, "I can't believe I'm doing this." She reached across the table and touched my hand, not for long, just a second, but it happened. "I can't either," I said, my voice a little quieter. We didn't kiss. We didn't do anything dramatic. But that was the moment it stopped being harmless. That was the exact second it turned into something real. When I dropped her off, yeah, she let me drive her home. We sat in the car for a few seconds. "I liked today," she said. "Me too." And then she leaned in and whispered, "This stays between us." I nodded, no hesitation. And just like that, it began. After that coffee, everything changed. Not in some dramatic, over-the-top way. There was no music swelling in the background, no thunderclap or lightning strike. It was quiet, subtle, but unmistakable. We'd crossed the line, and now we were both walking on the other side of it. And the crazy part? It didn't feel wrong. It felt natural, like something we both knew was going to happen, even if we never admitted it out loud. The following week at work, Jake was acting completely normal, laughing, showing me dumb TikToks, talking about his weekend trip to Flagstaff like nothing had changed. Because for him, nothing had. But for me, everything had. I kept playing it cool. I had to. And honestly, I wasn't even sure what it was yet. Was this just a flirtation a moment? Or was it something more? Amanda and I didn't text every day. That would have been too obvious, too risky. But we knew how to leave space and how to fill it just enough. She sent a message on Tuesday. I passed by that coffee shop again today. It made me smile. I replied 2 hours later. That smile looked good on you. Simple light, but behind every word there was heat, tension, and more than that, comfort. We both had lives to manage. She had work clients, yoga errands. I had my job, friends, a roommate who kept asking me why I suddenly shaved more often. But under the surface, there was this thread tying us together, and it was getting tighter every day. That Friday, Jake and I were heading out of the office late, and he said, "My mom's been asking about you again. You made an impression, man." I smiled. "Hope that's a good thing." She said, "You're polite. That's rare for my friends." "She's cool," I said casually, locking my phone and trying to hide the text Amanda had just sent. "Home alone tonight. No plans unless you have some." I waited until Jake drove off in his car before replying, "On my way." I'd never driven that fast to a neighborhood with a 25 mph speed limit. When I pulled up, the lights were low inside. She opened the door before I knocked, like she was already standing there waiting. Amanda looked different, relaxed, barefoot hair tied back casually, an oversized t-shirt that hit mid-thigh. It was simple, but she owned the moment without trying. "Hi," she said, voice soft. "Hey." She stepped back, let me in, closed the door behind me slowly. No words for a second, just eye contact, then, "Wine." "Sure." She poured us each a glass, and we sat on the couch, not too close, not too far. TV on in the background, muted, the kind of silence that felt intentional. "You okay?" she asked. "I am now." She smiled. "I wasn't sure if you'd actually come. I was already in the car before I finished reading your text." That made her laugh. She sipped her wine. I watched her. I was in no rush. I wanted to remember everything. The curve of her smile, the way she sat with one leg tucked under her nails clean and simple, no flashy stuff, just her. We talked for a while, music, relationships, trust. She told me about Jake's dad, how they divorced 7 years ago. It wasn't messy, but it wasn't great either. She said she dated a little, but nothing stuck. "Too many men my age are either bitter or boring," she said. I wanted something else. I looked at her. And now, "I'm not sure what this is, Tyler, but I know it doesn't feel forced." I nodded. "Same here." There was a pause. Then she leaned in, slow but direct, and kissed me. No hesitation, no rush, just a kiss that said, "We're in this now." It wasn't fireworks. It was something better, real, grounded, warm. After a moment, she pulled back, looked at me, and whispered, "I haven't done that in a long time." We didn't go further that night. We didn't need to. We just sat close, sipped wine, kissed a little more, and talked until after midnight. Then I left quietly. No neighbor saw me. No lights turned on. The next morning, I woke up to one text, still smiling. That weekend, I booked her again. No Jake, no excuses, just her inviting me over while he was out. We cooked together while she cooked. I chopped vegetables and pretended to help. She played old music on her phone, and I danced badly to make her laugh. This time we kissed, more touched, more lay on the couch, like we'd been doing this for years. Still no pressure, still no rush, just time together. It was starting to feel like a routine, like something we both wanted to protect. At one point she said, "I don't know what people would say if they found out." "I don't care what they say," I answered. She looked at me for a second like she was searching for something. Then she said, "Good." And that was it. We were in it now, and no one knew but us. By the time 2 more weeks passed, Amanda and I had found a rhythm. It wasn't planned, and it wasn't perfect, but it was ours. It was working. Jake and I were still close, still hung out at work, still grabbed lunch like nothing had changed. That's the part that always felt a little surreal. I'd sit across from him while we ate burritos in the break room, listening to him talk about football, And all I could think about was how I'd spent the night before watching a movie with his mom's head on my shoulder. But I never gave myself away. I was careful, calculated even. No stolen glances when I was at their house. No sudden changes in tone when Amanda would come downstairs to say hello. If Jake noticed anything different, he never said a word. What made it easier was how natural it all felt. Amanda wasn't playing a game. She wasn't reckless or wild or trying to act younger than she was. She was just happy, and I could tell she hadn't been, at least not in a long time. We met up 2, maybe 3 times a week, usually when Jake was out with friends or had late shifts at work. Sometimes I'd come over and she'd already have candles lit in the living room, music playing, low wine open, wearing those soft off-the-shoulder sweaters that made her look like she stepped out of a home design magazine. Other nights we just sat outside on her back patio wrapped in blankets, drinking tea and listening to the wind. One night she asked, "Are you sure this doesn't feel weird to you?" I looked at her and said, "The only weird thing is how normal it feels." That made her smile. She had a habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she smiled like that. I noticed everything. How she always poured herself half a glass instead of a full one. How she walked barefoot around the house. How she said my name slower when she was tired. She had this way of looking at me that made the rest of the world shrink. But there were close calls. One afternoon, Jake called me out of nowhere while I was sitting on Amanda's couch. She was in the kitchen making us sandwiches. I picked up and kept my voice level. "Yo," I said. "Hey, you home?" "Yeah, I just got back from the gym. What's up?" "Nothing, just bored. I might stop by your place later." "Cool, just text me first. I might head out." Amanda looked over at me from the kitchen, raising an eyebrow. I mouthed Jake and gave a thumbs up. She smiled a little too calmly and went back to slicing tomatoes. After I hung up, we sat in silence for a moment. "That was close," she said. I shrugged. "Part of the fun." "You're insane." "I'm consistent." She laughed and shook her head, walking over to me with 2 plates. "You're something, that's for sure." That night, as I was leaving, she walked me to the door, but this time she didn't open it right away. She just stood there looking at me. "You make me feel young again," she said. I didn't know how to respond at first, not because it was awkward, but because it was honest, deeper than what we usually allowed ourselves to say. "I don't want to go back to before this," she added. "You don't have to," I said. "We're not done yet." That moment hung in the air like a soft weight, warm but real. She kissed me softly and let me out the door. I walked to my car like I was floating. The next week, Jake invited me over to watch the game. I hesitated, but said yes. Part of me wanted to see her. Part of me was nervous. It had been a while since I'd been there in a normal setting. The whole house felt different to me now. When I arrived, Amanda opened the door. She was dressed casually, jeans and a hoodie, but there was this flicker in her eyes the second she saw me, a flicker I tried to ignore for everyone's sake. "Hey, Tyler," she said lightly, stepping aside to let me in. "Hey, Amanda." Jake was already in the living room with chips and beer. We spent the next couple of hours yelling at the TV, debating plays, and throwing popcorn. At one point, Amanda brought a tray of snacks. She handed me mine first. I felt her fingers brush mine just slightly, so quick. It might have been accidental, but it wasn't. That whole night, I was extra careful. I watched the way I looked at her, how often I spoke to her, even where I sat, but she was cool as ice, calm, casual, totally in control, like she'd been doing this for years. As I was leaving, Jake walked me out to the car. "My mom likes you, man," he said, totally offhand. "Oh yeah, I tried to play dumb. Yeah, she said you're respectful, different from the usual idiots I bring around." I smiled. "Well, I'll take that as a compliment." He clapped my shoulder. "You should." And that was it. I drove off feeling 20 different things at once. That weekend, Amanda and I met again, this time outside of her house. A short trail outside town just to walk and talk, neutral ground. She wore a ball cap and big sunglasses. I wore a hoodie and kept my head down. It was quiet, peaceful, safe. "We've made it this far," she said, "and nobody knows." "That's the part I like," I replied. "It's ours." She nodded. "Do you ever think, what if someone finds out? Then we deal with it." "And if Jake finds out," I paused. That was the one name we didn't like to say out loud. I'll never let him feel betrayed, I said carefully. But I also won't lie to myself about how I feel about you. She didn't say anything for a second. Then she stopped walking, turned to me and said, neither will I. We kissed again right there beneath the trees in the soft shade of a late afternoon. It wasn't about secrecy anymore. It was about truth, quiet, steady, and real. It's been almost 7 months since that first night Amanda and I crossed the line. 7 months of shared glances, secret texts, late-night meetups, whispered conversations, and close calls. 7 months of knowing we were living inside a secret that could fall apart at any time and choosing to protect it anyway. It never stopped feeling real, but it did start feeling more permanent. We found a way to make it work quietly behind the curtain of everyday life. She was careful. I was careful. And Jake never suspected a thing. He and I were still friends. He still joked about my love life, still asked why I didn't bring any girls around. Still nudged me to go on dates with girls from work. I'd smile, laugh, deflect, all while knowing I already had something better, something deeper, something I had no intention of giving up. Amanda and I developed rules: no texting when Jake was home, no calling after 900 p.m. unless it was urgent. We saved photos in hidden albums. Deleted messages as soon as they were read, met at random spots around the city just to sit in the same car and talk for 20 minutes. It was complicated, but it was worth it. One Sunday afternoon, I was at her house again. Jake had gone to a baseball game with friends. We had hours alone, which had become rare lately. She cooked, I helped. We talked about everything and nothing: TV shows, her latest interior design project, my weird coworker who hums to himself in the break room. It felt like life, not something secret or stolen, just life with her. After lunch, we sat on the back patio. The weather was perfect, sunny, but soft, like the heat was finally learning to be gentle. Amanda had her feet tucked up under her, wearing a thin cream-colored sweater and jeans. She sipped iced tea and looked out across the yard. "Can I ask you something?" she said without turning. "Of course." She took a long pause, then looked at me. "If this ever comes out, like really comes out, what would you do?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at her, really looked at her, at the woman who had somehow become the best part of my life without any grand plan or warning. The woman who was never supposed to be mine, but who felt like home in a way no one else ever had. "I think I'd still choose you," I said finally. Her eyes watered just a little. She smiled. "I'd choose you too." She leaned in and kissed me softly. No rush, no heat, just something honest, something sure. A few weeks later, Jake got promoted and started working longer hours. I started dropping by their house less, not because anything was wrong, but because we were both being more cautious. Amanda suggested we pull back a little just to stay ahead of any suspicion. I agreed, but even in the distance, we stayed connected. One night I got home to find a handwritten card in my mailbox. No name on the envelope, no text alert, no heads up, just one sentence inside: "You remind me every day what it feels like to be wanted." I smiled and tucked it into the drawer next to my bed, right next to the old concert ticket Amanda had given me on our fourth not-a-date outing. We never had a dramatic turning point. No big reveal, no explosion, no confrontation, just a decision, a shared understanding that what we had was real, and it didn't need to be proven to anyone else. Jake still doesn't know. Maybe one day he will, or maybe he won't. But here's the thing: it's been nearly a year, and Amanda and I are still seeing each other. Not every night, not in public, not with labels, but we see each other. We still meet in quiet corners of the city. We still talk on the phone after midnight. We still hold each other in the dark and laugh like kids who got away with something. And every time I see her, she still looks at me the way she did that first night, that look, the one that came right after she said, "You're not like his other friends," the one that said even more. People think stories like this end in disaster, and maybe most do, but not ours, because we never tried to force it into the world. We kept it where it felt right between us: uncomplicated, undeniable hours. And if you're wondering how it ends, it doesn't. Not yet. We're still in it, still smiling, still choosing each other in secret. And somehow that makes it feel even more real. Tyler and Amanda's story offers a profound lesson about the courage to embrace authentic connections, even when they exist in the shadows of secrecy. Their relationship, sparked by a fleeting moment of mutual recognition, teaches us that true intimacy thrives on honesty and presence, not societal approval. Tyler's careful balance of loyalty to his friend Jake and his growing bond with Amanda highlights the delicate art of navigating complex emotions with integrity. Amanda's vulnerability, reclaiming her sense of self after years of unfulfilling relationships, reminds us that it's never too late to seek what makes us feel alive. This story urges us to cherish the rare moments when someone sees us for who we truly are, and to honor those connections even if they defy convention. It's a call to live boldly in our truths, to protect what matters without harming others, and to find joy in the quiet, unspoken spaces where love grows. Tyler and Amanda's choice to keep their bond private yet deeply real shows that some of life's most meaningful experiences don't need validation, they simply need to be felt. What stirred your heart in Tyler and Amanda's secret yet sincere journey? Have you ever found a connection that felt right, even if it was unconventional? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your stories. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to join our community of heartfelt narratives. Let's keep exploring life's deepest lessons together.